We gaan door met het volgende gesprek. De Engelse auteur Mike Craven, schrijver van de Washington Poe en Tilly Bradshaw-serie. Daar zijn er inmiddels al van verschenen Brandoffer, Zwarte Zomer. Deze, de curator, die door de Vrij Nederland Detective en Thriller Gids genomineerd werd voor de VN Thriller van het jaar. En uiteraard beoordeeld werd met 5 sterren. En op 17 januari verschijnt het 4e deel in de serie, De Dode Hoek, vertaling van Dead Ground. Mike.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Joining us. Please bear with us. We're going to do, obviously, we're going to do the interview in English, especially on your side. Don't talk too fast because our subtitler can't keep up otherwise in virtual reality in Dutch because we don't have one. So bear with us. How are you doing this evening? Is all well?
Yes, everything's going very nicely at the minute, thank you.
That's lovely. I just said that your 4th book, we're a little behind from the UK. Your 4th book, Dead Ground, Dode Hoek, as we call it in Dutch, will launch in January here. Very much looking forward to that for the audience to get to know them. It's the 4th part in the series, the Poe and Bradshaw series. What can you tell us about these great characters of yours?
To be honest, they came about a little bit by accident. The character Washington Poe came about purely because somebody I was talking to misheard me say Washington Post. So they said to me, what's the Washington Poe? And I thought, what a great name that is for a character. Because you can't really call somebody Washington without explaining why. So I did that, and he became a lot darker than I'd originally intended, a lot more damaged as a character. I therefore had to change the way I'd originally written Tilly to make her a lot lighter, just to balance that out. So I sort of stumbled across the pair of them. Also, my first series, I had my 2 sort of main characters were already in a very strong friendship. They've been friends since they were very young children. So I thought it would be interesting to explore the start of a friendship, which is why I purposely had Tilly and Poe not really getting on at the start of the first book.
No, but they do have a great dynamic together. You already said that they're a bit dark and light side to them. How do you live with your characters? Do they change over the course of the books? Do they really come alive for you as an author?
I do. I sort of know how to write them. I'm far more confident in how to write them now. I'm more confident about leaving Tilly off the page more than I have been, to sort of give her to the readers in smaller doses. So the last book I wrote in the series, which isn't out until 2024 in the UK, because I've got a new series starting next year. Yes. Tilly isn't in it much at all. It's very much a Poe series, and I had to sort of discipline myself and just keep her off the page, because when Poe and Tilly are on scenes together, my natural instinct is to make it funny, and some scenes I do have to remember it is a crime book and very dark things are happening, and sometimes funny isn't the right isn't the right mood. I have to temper that with some quite serious bits as well.
But it's I think, and for me as a reader, it's also the other way around. The humor you use very well, because there's a lot, even loud outlaws in your books. But you use it, I guess, as a way to balance out the dark side of the stories.
Yes, I do. I just sort of describe it as a circuit breaker, so it sort of snaps you out. So I think it allows me to go slightly darker than I would ordinarily want to go, because I know I can just have Poe being really sarcastic about something, or Tilly just saying something naive and innocent, which makes you laugh. And once you're laughing, you're not worrying about what you've just read about too much. And yeah, I can take you along a little bit further than I would. But the Dead Ground, I think probably is the funniest one to date, albeit it's dealing with some fairly dark issues. My agent calls it a Tilly book. She does get some good one-liners in.
Very much true, yeah. You're on my mind way more often than you would expect, probably, because very often when I sit down for dinner, I think about the opening scene of Black Summer, where a character is eating a Ortland bird. What can you tell us about that scene and how that came to you?
This is so weird because this scene probably is the one that people want to talk about with most, and it's one that I wrote and then sort of forgot about. I didn't really pay much attention to it. It wasn't until my agent read it, then rang me up straight away, and he said, it's absolutely horrific, that scene. We've got to keep it in exactly like you've got it. And I thought, well, it's just two people having a meal, but I suppose it's the cruelty. I just from nowhere, really, and because it's true. This actually,
that's how you eat a bird like that. But
it wasn't long ago. It was banned in France. It was legal up until a certain point. It's very much a French dish, and it's supposed to be one of the most delicious things you can ever do. You can never.
It's not taken from personal experience.
Have you had it? Have you?
No, I'm asking you.
Oh no, I don't know. I mean, I do eat meat, but so I suppose it'd be hypocritical to say I wouldn't. But my gut instinct is to say, no, I probably wouldn't.
For you, no, but a scene like this, it's so vivid and it's so cinematic. How does that come to you as a writer? Is it something that pops in your head, or you read something? I don't know. You see something on the television.
I have quite a visual way of writing, so I sort of imagine what the scene is going to look like, and then I describe how I've imagined it. So, which holds us in good stead, actually, because we've got a lot of TV stuff going on at the minute, and some of the scenes, I mean, I've been told they're already written, so there's not a great deal of adapting needs to be done, because I've described the scenes as I saw. So I've already written the movie in my head. Yeah. But for the Ortland Bunton scene, I had to do a lot of research, and all I did to start with was Google what's the cruelest dish that you can have, and there's some horrific ones. A lot of them are from Japan, which you probably won't be surprised to know. China are quite notorious for eating live fish and things, but this one I thought I was going to have a chef who had trained in France, so it was quite perfect. And that bit about putting the napkin over your head to hide your shame from God, I thought that was just absolutely perfect for a crime book.
Yeah, well done. We're getting some questions in the chat. In the previous life, you were a probation officer.
Yes.
This sort of ties in with a question from Ellen. She says, "Is being an author is it a dream come true? Did you always wanted to be an author?"
I did, actually. When I was little, and I mean like 9 years old, 10 years old, I got my mum to send me off for a correspondence course on how to write a novel. So it's been pretty much a dream of mine since I was sort of that age. But it was always, because I'm from a very working class area in the north of England, and that just wasn't a dream that felt attainable. So I didn't pursue it until really 2013. That's when I decided to give it a go, sort of 30 odd years after, well, 40 years after I'd initially had my dream. So I'll see what happens, basically. But when I joined the army when I was 16, and I didn't write anything when I was in the army. I read an awful lot, and I joined probation in 1999. And I started to write a little bit then, but it wasn't until 2013 when I entered a competition just to put you had to hand over your first 3,000 words of a novel. And I got shortlisted, and I went down to London. I met Lee Child and Frederick Forsyth, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. So I decided I'll just sort of push it a bit and see what happens. And if it works, then great. If it doesn't, then I'm still a probation officer.
Yeah, but you did give up your daytime job then?
I did in 2015. So I've been full-time for over 7 years now.
We're closing off this evening with a writing contest of our own. As a bit of a head start for that, do you have any advice for any budding writers in the audience?
Particularly for competitions, but I think generally for genre novels, particularly crime novels, you really need to nail your first 2 or 3 pages. Get something. Don't start with the weather unless the weather is absolutely critical. I was going to say don't start with someone having a meal, but I did that and I sort of got away with it. Really think, I mean, Dead Ground is a good example. It doesn't really start with a terrible, horrific crime. It just starts with a bank robbery where everyone's wearing James Bond masks. So you just need to make it interesting, and also write what you enjoy reading. Ignore the advice of write what you know. Write what you enjoy reading, because it'll come across so much more in you, in whatever you put on the page.
And how is that for you? Do you prefer writing in a series, or is that because you get to know the characters better, or at one point because you're going to start a new series after this one?
Well, the new series is actually an old series. I wrote the book that's out next year. I wrote in 2015, purely to see if I could write a book in the first person. And then, so I wrote it before I wrote the first Poe book. I sort of enjoy writing series but it's quite easy now because you know the characters. You're not inventing anyone from scratch. You've got an established readership, so you know you're going to sell a certain amount of books anyway. But I think every now and then it's good for your sort of your literary muscles to branch out and write something a little bit different. So I'm going to write some standalones in the future, just to keep things fresh, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. Here's a question from Marion. What's a book you wish you wrote yourself?
I'm going to say Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. Just simply, it's the book that I reread the most times because I find it just so hilarious and so clever at the same time.
Well, yeah, is that what appeals? Was it a book that inspired you to write as well?
It was well, Terry Pratchett as a whole. He sort of taught me how to build up a collective group of characters. Which is why I tend to, if I write an interesting character in one book, I'll keep them around and I'll revisit them and they'll become part of the series. So Estelle Doyle, for example, in Black Summer, I enjoyed writing her. So she's now a series regular. And some of the police officers who Poe works with are regulars. There's a character in Dead Ground called Bugger Rumble, who is a homeless guy who does sort of street entertainment just to get beer money, and I really enjoyed writing him. So he's back in the next Poe book as well. So Terry Pratchett does that very well. There's characters who you might not see for 5 books, but you instantly remember them because he writes them so vividly. It might only be on the page for half a page or a paragraph or something, but you just instantly remember. You bring them back. It's just so beautifully descriptive, and he just has so many interesting, well, he did, obviously he's dead now, so many interesting ideas.
They're still here, the books are still here.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have a couple of questions. I'm going to keep them because I think they're going to be great for our panel discussion later on with Steve. So we're going to come back to you. I'm going to have a short chat with Steve Kavanagh now, and then I'll see you back on the other end for a panel discussion with the both of you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Hi, Mike.